Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I am here with...
I'm Devin Lewis with Steve Jackson Games. One of the Munchkin developers. I wrote Munchkin Shadowrun.
And I'm Will. My last name is hard for people to pronounce, so it doesn't really matter that much. I'm the Munchkin Line Editor at Steve Jackson Games, and I write some Munchkin stuff too, and do a little bit of everything else development-wise.
I'm really glad I have a chance to talk to both of you. I love the Munchkin games. I just got the Munchkin Batman one not too long ago, and it took me by surprise because I didn't expect to play the villains in Munchkin Batman. That was a really nice twist. I love that. But so yeah, we're here to talk about today about Munchkin Shadowrun. And now I love Steve Jackson Games because they always come out with products that I will never have expected. Like not too long ago they put out Gru, the card game, which is like, wow. I can't believe people still remember Gru the Barbarian. So yeah, Munchkin Shadowrun. So let's start at the beginning. How did you get these two worlds to come together?
Licensing partnerships are a big part of what we're always looking for, because if we can get a product in front of somebody who likes something else, then it can like pull them into our world a little bit. And we've worked with Paizo and a few other people. When you mentioned Gru, we actually got the license to that game's rules decades ago, but the art license wasn't easy to track down. And it wasn't until we sorted out that art license that we got that game back in print. So it was out of print for 20 years or something like that. And it wasn't originally published by Steve Jackson Games either. So we're always looking for interesting things to publish, and the Munchkin rules lend themselves to anything that can be like an adventure, fighting monsters, gaining treasures, that kind of stuff. And we reached out to Catalyst, and they were interested. And Munchkin is an RPG joke kind of game anyway, so it was a perfect match.
Our former CEO, Phil Reed, is a massive BattleTech nerd, and he was always kind of poking around at Catalyst like, hey, can we work together on something? And so that is at least one of the ways we wound up with Munchkin Shadowrun.
Yeah.
Shadowrun. Now, oh man, that game brings back a lot of great memories. It was probably my first sci-fi universe that introduced the idea of fantasy in a feature set, at least for me when I was young. If I may ask, being that this game has been out for a long time, did you have any difficulty in trying to bring Shadowrun into the Munchkin universe? Was there like an issue with like how that world works in Shadowrun to the Munchkin world?
No, it was. I'm not going to say it was easy. It was fun, but I really didn't have a lot of trouble because Munchkin was originally designed to kind of poke at Dungeons and Dragons players, the Munchkins that everybody kind of despises. The fact that it's set up to deal with classes and items and rule sets, Munchkin is porting it over was actually pretty easy. The biggest part was making sure I got what I felt was the flavor of the setting in, which is where I got the Matrix track, which is a big part of this new set. But the Matrix itself is such a big part of Shadowrun because you have this other virtual world layered on top of everything that can be huge focus points of the story. There are some games that are just take place in that Matrix in the world. I had to make sure to get that in there. So that was what took me the most work. But actually meshing this setting with Munchkin, that part was actually really smooth.
Devin did most of the heavy lifting, but just to echo what he said, since Shadowrun's already got fantasy elements, right? Elves, dwarves, that kind of stuff. And Munchkin has so many different ways of attacking the problem of how do we tell this story with the Munchkin rules. Because you mentioned Batman. If everybody was Batman, right? If everybody was playing the hero of the story, it'd be weirder. But Batman has all those criminals, the rogues gallery that we all know and love. and flipping everything on its head and saying you're playing the villains, and instead of monsters, you're committing crimes, and Batman is a thing that can stop you from doing crimes. That was the way that we really made Batman work into Munchkin. And in this set, we decided that we wanted to go with the powers, which is something that's existed in other Munchkin sets, but it's not the standard races, classes, elements that's in like core fantasy Munchkin. But we thought that gave you a better way to see yourselves at a Shadowrun character, because that way you can get a little bit of magic and a little bit of hacking and a little bit of guns and kung fu and whatever else without having to say, well, I'm only this thing and I'm only that thing, while keeping the dwarves and the elves and the trolls and the orcs and that kind of stuff that was already a fundamental part of the Munchkin experience.
For Munchkin, do you play trolls, the dwarves, the elves, or do you play the corporation? Just to be clear.
No, you as you progress through the game, you can find a dwarf card or a troll card and become that, and then you have the powers, so you can become a decker, a rigger, any number of those kinds of things. You can get magical spells, stuff that you can cast. So you are one of the runners. But glad you mentioned the corporations. They are also a real big part of Shadowrun, and I didn't leave them out. So what I did was, in this set, all of the items that you can get have a manufacturer. So they're Renraku, they're As Technology, Spinrad, and Ares, yeah. And some of the cards in the set actually work with those. So the Ares Special Forces you can't use the Ares weapons on them, or they get a bonus if you have them, things like that. This one, because of the rich history of Munchkin and all of the things that we've made fun of, we have the tools to move things around so that it's still totally Munchkin but fits the settings.
And let me just showcase a little of the artwork on the cards. It definitely has the iconic Munchkin style of artwork. Were there any challenges or difficulties when it came to the art direction for this game?
Not really. We did have a bit of a shuffle with artists. The artist we had planned got into an accident and couldn't do it, so we had to ask Lar D'Souza instead, who we've worked with for a long time. We love Lar. He is very creative, very funny. One of the things that we encourage our artists to do is, if we give them art direction and art spec, if they have what they think is a better idea, then they can let us know. And oftentimes some of the funniest cards come not from us, but from them. Catalyst themselves were really cool about everything. They really had very few art notes, very few things that they didn't like. Some of the biggest challenges were, making sure that we gave some of the items and things personality, because there's a lot of guns in Shadowrun, and all right, this is the 6th pistol. Make sure it looks different from the other 5. That one was a bit tougher, not too much. It really helped that I did choose to give them all to the corporations. So I said, okay, let's make Spinrad like the cheap, fast plastic commercial knockoffs of everything. And let's give Renraku the really high-tech futuristic look. And so that helped, inform what came out of the images and the art.
Devin handled almost all the art on this. I just got to follow along and look at stuff and think it was funny. So I was really, really happy with how this turned out. Lar, like Devin said, is an amazing artist that can turn ideas that you might not think are as funny as they could be into pretty fun art. And he did some interesting things in this set that are kind of Easter eggy, but not necessarily for Shadowrun or Munchkin or that kind of stuff. There's a certain amount of almost Jetsons vibes to some of the art because he was going a little whimsical with the futurism. So we get a lot of fun art, and this set has a bunch of cards in it. It's a full core set with the deluxe board and all that kind of stuff. So we got to do as much art as we possibly could for this.
Okay, so it's not like an expansion to the original Munchkin game. It's its own game.
Yeah, when we do a new theme, we tend to launch that theme with a core box. Every once in a while, we'll do something weird, like we did a Conan booster years ago and that kind of stuff. But generally, if it's a theme that's broad enough to cover 168 cards or so, then we launch it with its own core box. So if somebody only wants to play Shadowrun Munchkin, they can just play Shadowrun Munchkin. But if they want to mix it and match it with Star Munchkin and other elements of the game, they can.
So comparing this to the other Munchkin games, are there any differences with the rules? I heard something about, you mentioned a bit about the Matrix.
Well, so before I get to the Matrix, the combination of vehicles and powers in this set means that players actually get really powerful really quickly, but that has proven to be really fun rather than a problem. And those two things have been in Munchkin before, and each set that they're in tend to skew the power level a little higher. I don't think we put them together before, and that has created some ridiculousness that is in the best way. The Matrix track, however, is a totally new deck of cards that is separated into 4 different layers of the Matrix. Layer 1, 2, 3, and 4. You shuffle all the layer 1 cards, and these are double-sided cards, and you get 3 of them. You put 2 of them out on whatever side you like. 2 level 2s, 2 level 3s, and then there's only 1 level 4 card. On your turn, everybody starts on the very first card. On your turn, you can perform the Matrix action, and these tend to be things like discard 2 cards, give another player a card. There's one that says discard a card and tell all the other players about your first experience on the internet. So a little irreverence there. For completing the Matrix action, you draw a door card to keep, and you move on to the next one. As you advance up the different layers, you get an additional +1 combat bonus to fighting monsters and things in the other half of the game. But when you get to the layer 4, the Matrix action on there says flip this card over. You flip it over and you find kind of the boogeyman of the Matrix for Shadowrun, the Grid Overwatch division. They are a level 20 monster. If you can beat them, you win the game, rather than having to get to level 10. So this is an alternate win condition.
Yeah, we're really excited when we can find a thing in a theme that lets us play around with the mechanics of Munchkin, because we've put out things like side quest decks and dungeon cards and lots of stuff like that, and all of those are digging deeper into role playing in general. But it's also fun when we can say the reality in Shadowrun has 2 layers, right? The internet and then the street. And so if we can incorporate something to reference the fact that you kind of exist in both those worlds, and you can win by either hacking the Matrix all the way or getting a level 10 normally, then that's an interesting thing to sink our teeth into as a game design element of the game.
What can you tell us about the crowdfunding plan so far for this? Well, actually, maybe I shouldn't assume that. I'm assuming this is going to be on Kickstarter again. Am I understanding that correct? Oh, is it going to come straight to the stores?
Yeah, this is getting a standard release. We thought about putting it out on Kickstarter or BackerKit or one of the other crowdfunding things, but we decided, since the brand is so popular and it fit our timelines better, that we would just release it normally with stores. And we have an expansion in the works that we've shown off a couple of places here and there at some trade shows and stuff. It's going to come out next spring.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, time to get rid of my stretch goal questions. Forget about those. All right. So when is the, I hate to say release date, because, shipping stuff going around the world, it's chaos right now. But when do you hope for this to be out by?
This should be on its way to stores right now. We have copies in our warehouse, I believe. Stuff's up for pre-order. It is marked to start shipping on the 15th. So it is in circulation towards actual retail right now.
Oh, that's excellent. Viewers, make sure you go to your local gaming store and request a copy before it's all gone from shelves. That's happened to me before with Munchkin stuff. I'll think, it's coming out, and I go to the store, it's all gone. Well, so let's talk a little bit about the phenomenon of Munchkin. Uh, Munchkin has been coming. It's been out for a good number of years now.
More than
And
20,
it
yeah.
keeps coming out. Yeah, and it is like a good deal of different variations of it, expansions and so forth. What is it about Munchkin do you feel makes it so successful?
I think it's the themes primarily. If you have a group of D&D players or Pathfinder players or something like that, and you want to play something a little bit more casual, but definitely like in the same vein as what you're doing, like if like two people can't make it to your regular D&D night or whatever, it's really easy to break out Munchkin, the core game, and just say, okay, we're still going to be wizards and rogues and all that kind of stuff and fight monsters, but we're going to do it this way. And then when you have friends that are maybe not into that theme, you can generally find something that they're going to be able to latch onto, right? There's sci-fi and cowboys and Cthulhu and all that kind of stuff. So if you have a bunch of friends that are big Cthulhu fans, they love the movies and the video games and all that kind of stuff, but they're not so into board games, Munchkin's a light enough rule set with some interesting choices and back and forth, take that kind of gameplay, that you can get your friends who love Cthulhu but maybe don't play board games normally to sit down and try it with you and laugh at the jokes, and then possibly bring them deeper into gaming in general.
Yeah, we've seen Munchkin as a gateway game for a long time. I also think it's a game of stories. When people talk about Munchkin, they always have their favorite story when somebody pulled out a win or fought a monster that everyone piled on so much that it became a level 100 that nobody could ever beat. The times that you have with Munchkin make you remember the game. Maybe you don't love the gameplay. Maybe you don't love that sometimes it can take a while. But you have a story of a time when you played Munchkin that was hilarious and fun, and you will always remember. Yeah, like I said, it's a game about stories.
So Munchkin has done a bunch of variations and different themes. Is there anything that you would like to see Munchkin of in some way?
That's a dangerous question, because for all right now, we're in licensing talks with dozens of people to do those kind of things. So I try to not hint at anything that might even barely be a possibility, because I don't want the grapevine of the internet to turn the story into we're suddenly making a thing. But my standard answer for that is anything that has enough of a depth to it, whether it's a TV show or a novel series or whatever, that has enough stuff we can dig into. Like right now, I've written one 40K expansion, and there's previous versions of 40K expansions that have come out before I work for the company again. And it's really easy to write stuff for the Warhammer 40,000 universe because there's so much of it, right? It's been around since the late 80s. They constantly create new things for the setting, mostly just to blow those things up. So it's got a ton of content that we can work with. So it's really easy to dig in and find the like 20 or 30 things along a theme to fill in something like a dungeon set. So my general thing is anything that's fun would be a great thing to turn into Munchkin.
I worked on Munchkin Disney for the op, and it was so much fun to get to really dig into the rich lore and history and just all of the Disney goodness. So anything that we can play around in is just amazing. Though you got to make sure it has enough items.
Yeah, the struggle is always, okay, this is a great thing. There's a million monsters in it, but they don't use any tools really to do that, right? Like there are some TV shows where Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that kind of stuff, they might have used enough items over the course of all the seasons for us to pull from some interesting stuff, or maybe they just didn't quite. And so you got to kind of scrape the bottom of the barrel and figure out what those extra things are. But something like Shadowrun, with books and books and books of gear, it's fairly easy compared to something that's more of a pop culture thing that might not really have all the parts in it that a Munchkin game needs to easily slot into.
If I may pick your brains about Shadowrun a little bit, Shadowrun is also something that's been around for a while, and it's not only one of the few role playing games that's actually transcended other media. It's been video games, for example. What do you feel? What is it about Shadowrun that still has such a good impact on role players today?
I think that overlap between fantasy and cyberpunk is just really attractive. My first encounter with Shadowrun was on the Sega Genesis, the video game that wound up there, and I was a kid that loved fantasy novels. I read everything I could get my hands on. I had tons of Piers Anthony and Terry Pratchett and David Eddings, just a ton of like the deep fantasy. Of course, I had Tolkien, but I saw there's an orc in this. That's cool. And I started playing. I was like, wait, why am I in a back alley? Why is there, shotguns and hover cabs and things like that? What is going on here? And that really pulled me in and has always kept me there. And I'm just like, oh, anytime I saw something Shadowrun, I was like, oh, I've got to check that out. That allure of that world. It's like, okay, well, I'm super familiar with, one of the genres is something I really love, but this is crossing over into this. So it really pulls you into the, okay, well, this thing I love and this other thing, you got chocolate and my peanut butter and my chocolate.
Yeah, I think it's great because it does cover so many bases. Not only do you have traditional fantasy things, you also have all kinds of cool sci-fi stuff, and you've got all that gray area in the middle where the sci-fi and the fantasy connect. Like there's a dragon that runs a corporation, and you can be an elf that hacks into the internet but also uses a crazy powerful sword that's magical powers and all that kind of stuff. You fight the gods, but you can also just have a street fight with machine guns. So it can really cover any and every base you could ever think about of what kind of game you want to play with it. So I think that's one of its great strengths.
So go ahead.
I'm not going to say that other RPGs don't have living histories and anything, but Shadowrun's history and their world is always changing. This is called this version is called the Sixth World because it's kind of the sixth major upheaval that's happened. It's not just a new edition. It's the world has moved forward. Things have happened. Characters that have been movers and shakers in the world have died, and here's the aftermath of it. And all of that history since the 80s has been here and still felt. People love it when a new edition of Dungeons and Dragons comes out, and it's like, okay, well, now we're going to update one of these other worlds that people love, and it's like, awesome. Well, you don't really have to drag something back. It still happened in Shadowrun. It's not new and fresh. Everything has moved forward.
And I was going to add that something about that cover. It's really iconic. Like when I think of 80s role playing game, that's one of the covers I think about. Mm-hmm. So yes, one last question before we wrap up. If I were to come to your house and I asked to let's play a Munchkin game, which Munchkin game would we play?
Mine is going to be Axe Cop, because nothing to me is funnier than Axe Cop as a concept. The company only had the license for a little while, and we only made that one core set for it, but we got to use the Axe Cop art, so it's very much a Axe Cop product, and it has one of my favorite weird combinations. Like Shadowrun, it also uses powers. So you can play Axe Cop because you can be a cop, which is a class, and you can have the power Axe. And all of those kind of things, the crazy combinations and stuff are half the fun of telling stories about Munchkin. This one time I was an elf and I had this fireball staff and blah, blah, blah. But it's even funnier when it's something like Axe Cop. where you're like, yeah, there for a while I was Flute Man, and then suddenly I became something else, and I defeated, this evil Santa and all that kind of stuff. So Axe Cop's always going to be my top most favorite version of Munchkin.
I'm going to cheat and say Munchkin Quest.
Yeah.
Because I really love a lot of the things that were done in Munchkin Quest, but Munchkin Quest is the board game version of Munchkin that we made. Munchkin card game is going to be Apocalypse. I love alternate win conditions. Who would have guessed? The idea that the seventh seal opens, the apocalypse happens, and he who has the most toys wins. That always amuses me.
Any last words before we wrap up?
No, it was great talking to you about Munchkin and Shadowrun and other things that we covered. And anytime you want us back, then just ask.
Devin and Will, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about Munchkin Shadowrun. And I can't wait to try this out. And to my viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time.